want to like be loud. I know that's exactly not what you want me to do.
Okay, Patrick here. I told everyone in the house to be quiet while we make this video, but no one's going to be quiet. We're going to try to rip through the tuning of your DragonForce 65. I thought that would be useful for our fleet and then also other people's fleets. There's two main sources for this. There's the Soak Sails tuning guide from England, and then there's also some resources from Australia. So I'm going to try to go through it really fast. So if you're trying to set your boat up for racing, this is sort of the workflow that I do. So here we go. The tools that you will need, the numbers themselves, which I'll have in the video and in the description, a metric ruler, and also a metric tape measurer. Step one is to lower your jib boom to as low as possible. If your jib's too high, it's going to throw all the rest of the numbers off and your boat is going to have a really hard time tacking. Mine's at about 10 millimeters above the deck. I can't get it much lower than that because otherwise the front of the boom here would start to hit the deck. Step number two is sliding the attachment point onto your jib boom back. There's some different numbers on here that people use. I'm at about 62 to 63 millimeters back from the front of the ring. You can play around with this a little bit, but this is the number that is working well for me. Step number three is the position of the mast step itself. You can move this forward and aft, and the measurement is from the front eyelid to the front of the mast. So we take a measurement like this, and the tuning guide calls for 176 millimeters. So that again is from the front eyelid to the front of the mast, 176 millimeters. On the version 6 boats, they come with this sort of graduated mast step position, and the proper mast step tends to align with the middle notch. So that's sort of a quick way to do it, but you might want to confirm that with the measurement. Step number 4 is to loosen the backstay tension and the forestay tension, so that neither is pulling the mast forward or aft. You want it just to be sitting just kind of neutrally in the boat. Step number 5 is to measure the rake of the mast. And to do this, it's easier to put the boat on its side. The measurement goes from the top of the backstay hook on the stern to the bottom of the uppermost ring on the mast. And the measurement is 785 centimeters. So I'm going to go here, I'm going to measure it out, and I'm at, currently, with no tension on, I'm really close. I'm at just about 785, 786, and if I wanted to change this rake, I would do that by tightening up the forestay wire here. I wouldn't do it with the backstay. You shouldn't have to do it with the backstay. The backstay should be able to stay loose, and if you need to, you make just little adjustments on your forestay tension, but you shouldn't have to make many. It should be pretty close. Number 6 is to loosen the luffs on the main and the jib. So the luff on the sail is kind of the leading edge of the sail here, and also on the jib. And normally, like in a normal boat, you'd kind of want to take wrinkles out and have it flat, but with these sails, apparently it's best to keep it loose. So what we're going to go here and adjust this little rope here, just to give the luff of the main plenty of looseness. It should almost be able to kind of create little scallops between the sail ties. And then again here with the jib, we're going to just loosen the top, and we're going to loosen the bottom so the jib is resting very loosely on this wire, almost to the point that it can form like little horizontal wrinkles in the sail. Next, we're going to want to plug the boat in so we can sheet in and sheet out with the controller. So you want to plug your boat in for that, lay the boat on its side. Now we're going to do the outhauls. So the outhauls are this little adjustment of the boom that's going to change the kind of the depth in the lower part of the sail. And between 20 and 25 centimeters is the recommended tune, with having it looser for when it's lighter and having it tighter and flatter when it's windier. So we're going to take our ruler here and we're going to measure and it's a little bit hard to see this, but we're going to measure the distance from the sail to the center of the boom, and we're looking for 20 to 25 centimeters. So if I come in here, I'm at about 25 centimeters because the boat is already kind of tuned, but if, say, just for example, if it was too tight, right, I'll make my sail much flatter, right, you come in here and say, okay, that's more at about that's at about 15, and so I'm just going to loosen that out until I get to 20 to 25. Normally I'll leave this at around 25, and then if it gets windier and I'm really overpowered, I'll bring it down to 20 to help flatten it out. And it's the same measurement, 20 to 25, for both the main and the jib. So I'll just go up here and do the exact same measurement on the jib. Step number 8 is our jib trim position, and so the measurement goes from the end. You basically sheet your sails all the way in, and I'm going to pull the boom out until it's tight on the jib here, and I'm going to measure from the end of the boom to the center of the mast. And this should be about 40 to 45 millimeters, and I'm right about there. I'm right between 40 and 45. To adjust this, you would use this little bosey here on the jib boom and adjust it. This is one of the few measurements that you're going to probably adjust each day you sail, depending on how well the boat is balanced for the wind conditions. For example, if you find the boat tends to round up a lot on its own, and when the rudder is straight, it just kind of rounds up and your jib luffs a little bit, you might want to tighten this up and sheet the jib a little tighter, and that'll help bring the bow of the boat down. And conversely, if the boat is rounding down, you might want to loosen up your jib trim so it gets a little bit more leverage in the main and it starts to hook up a little bit. Just like the jib, we have to adjust the main trim. So what we want is for the mainsail to just be hitting center line when we're max trimmed in. And this is something you can kind of subtly adjust. And different skippers have sort of different styles. Some people like to have a little bit more tightness in the main sheet when they're max trim, so that they can kind of close the leech of their sail. You can see, if you look down the leech of the sail, that last bit of trim can really open or close the leech quite a bit, and it can make a big difference. So it sort of has to do with your trim style, but in general, what I try to achieve is when it's max trimmed in, my main is just kind of center line, and I have reasonable tension in my main sheet, but it's not like super, super tight. Finally, our last and arguably the most important adjustment to tune your boat is the leech profile. For the sock sails, the measurement on the main is from the middle batten to just a relatively tight. You don't want your backstay tight at this point, but you don't want it like sagging because it'll give an inaccurate measurement. So you want to just take the slack out of it, but you don't want to tighten it. And what we're measuring here is from the end of this batten to our backstay, and that should be 70 millimeters, give or take. And right now, I am at like 43, so I'm quite tight, which means my sail is too flat. So to change our mainsail leech profile, we have to come in and loosen our vang. So I'm going to undo the little lock nut, and I'm going to spin it. Not sure how to describe it. I think I'm going actually righty-tighty here, and that is opening up the leech. So what I'm going to do is, as I'm tightening it, I'm just taking the measurement and looking. I'm at about 55 millimeters. Do it a little bit more. I'm at about 60. That's pretty good. So hopefully this perspective gives you a little bit of just kind of an idea of how much twist the sail should have. This measurement is up to debate a little bit. The Soak tuning guide calls for 70 centimeters. I find that tends to be a little bit too loose, and I think the boat kind of doesn't quite point as much as I want it to, so I've been using kind of 60 centimeters, or sorry, 60 millimeters, and I found in the Australian tuning guide they say in light winds 60 to 70, and then as it gets windier 70 to 75, maybe even as much as 80, and I think that sounds about right. When it gets really, really windy, you want the top of the sail to just open up to just kind of spill the air out so the boat isn't just heeling over all the time. And this is a really, really, really important measurement to have right, because if your sail is too flat, you're just not going to go fast. So now I'm holding the boat in the air here so you can see it. We're going to do the same thing with the jib to try to give some leech profile into the jib, and the measurement is for the stock sails is the top batten. I think the stock sails don't have a batten here, so you just go halfway up the jib, and we're going to measure from the edge of the sail to the line. I don't know what this is called. It's sort of like the jib boom lifting line, and that is going to, the tuning guide calls for about 50 millimeters, and I'm right about there. But to illustrate how you would do this, if you want to create more leech profile, you would just tighten this up, and see as I lift it up, it opens up the jib. And if I wanted to flatten it, you know, say I take this off entirely, you'll see that the jib is really flat. So if I lift it up, I get curvature. If I lift it down, it's flat. So I want it to be basically what you're, just like any sailboat, you're trying to match the curvature of the main with the jib so that you have a nice, they call it the slot. You have a nice slot here for wind to travel efficiently through. So that's it. Our boat is now tuned at its base setting. And then the next real question is, what do you change and when do you change it? In general, I would adjust, as I said before, how far in I was trimming my jib based on how well the boat is balancing on any particular day that I'm sailing it, and little tiny adjustments on that will make a really big difference. As the wind increases and gets windier and windier, the two main things I would do would be to flatten out the bottom part of both sails, so tightening the outhaul and going from, say, 25 millimeters on this to 20 or even flatter on both the main and the jib. And then what I would also do is incrementally tighten my backstay. So right now, if say it's like 0 to 5 knots, you want your backstay like basically just loose. And then as it gets windier and windier, you want to incrementally tighten your backstay. And what that will do is open the leech of your sails and basically depower them. I find that if I do that, I don't really need to change my boom bang, and it really simplifies how you respond to increasing wind. So that's just the way I do it. This is again the baseline setting for light wind, and then again as it gets windier, I'll tighten the outhaul, I'll tighten the backstay, and I'll tweak with how tight I'm trimming things in. But that's basically it. I don't usually flatten the sails at all. I don't mess with the forward rake at all. I just try to keep it really, really simple. And then when it's windy, and say you've changed or something, and then you know it's going to be light the next time you go sailing, I'll just come back in and do what we just did and get back to the baseline. But once you kind of get a hang for it, you can get to baseline really quickly. So hopefully that is helpful in setting your DF65 up for racing. And if you have any questions or comments about the ideas we've shown here, just add them in the comments below, and we can have a cool discussion about it. All right, thanks.